Why we go where we shouldn't. There's something about abandoned places that calls to people. Not during the day, not when sunlight pours through broken windows and makes everything look harmless. No, the real pull begins at night, when the wind moves through empty hallways, when every sound feels intentional, when buildings that once held lives feel like they're still holding something. Some people explore abandoned places for curiosity, some for history, some for the thrill, but anyone who has ever stepped into one after midnight knows there's another reason. Because abandoned places aren't truly empty. They're filled with echoes, memories, and sometimes something else. Tonight we're visiting abandoned places at night. Not just the buildings themselves, but the experiences people have inside them. And by the end, you might think twice before entering one again. The first step inside, every abandoned place has a moment, a threshold. It's the second you step inside and realize you're no longer outside anymore. Explorers often describe the same feeling, a subtle shift, like the air itself is different, heavier, still, watching. Imagine walking toward an old hospital at night, windows broken, paint peeling, wind pushing through empty rooms. Your flashlight hits the entrance. Dust particles float like suspended time. You step in, and suddenly every sound matters. Your footsteps echo too loudly. Your breathing feels intrusive. The building feels aware of you. Many explorers say the first few minutes inside an abandoned place are the hardest, because your senses sharpen, your instincts wake up, and somewhere deep inside, your brain whispers, you shouldn't be here. But curiosity pushes you forward anyway, and that's when things begin to change. Sounds that don't make sense. Abandoned places are never silent. They creak, they shift, they breathe with the wind. At least that's what people tell themselves. But then there are sounds that don't match the environment. Footsteps when you're standing still, doors moving without wind, a faint metallic clatter deep inside the building. Urban explorers often report hearing movement in upper floors when they're alone. One explorer described exploring an abandoned factory at 2 a.m. He was filming, quietly documenting rusted machines and broken glass. Then he heard it. A slow, deliberate footstep. On the floor above him, he froze, listened. Another step. Then another, not random, not debris falling. It sounded like someone walking. He called out, no response. When he finally worked up the courage to go upstairs, there was no one there. But the dust on the floor had fresh footprints. Not his, and not there when he arrived. Sometimes abandoned places make sounds, but sometimes they answer back. The feeling of being watched. There's one experience almost everyone reports. Not a sound, not a sight, a feeling, the unmistakable sense that you're not alone. It often begins subtly. A slight tension in your shoulders, the urge to look behind you, a strange awareness of empty doorways. You shine your flashlight into a room and feel like something just stepped back out of view. Psychologists say this is natural, the brain reacting to unfamiliar environments, darkness triggering survival instincts, but explorers describe something deeper, a pressure, a presence. One photographer visiting an abandoned school at night said she felt fine until she entered the gymnasium. The moment she stepped inside, she felt watched, not imagined, not anxiety, watched. She turned around repeatedly, checked every doorway, every corner, nothing, but the feeling intensified until she couldn't stay any longer. When she reviewed her camera later, one photo showed the far end of the gym, a shadow, tall, standing where no one had been. She never returned. Because sometimes the feeling isn't in your head. Objects that move. Urban explorers have a rule: never assume something will stay where you left it, because in abandoned places, objects sometimes move. A chair that wasn't facing you before, a door that slowly closes, a hanging chain that begins to sway. You tell yourself it's wind, gravity, old structures settling, until it happens in a sealed room, with no breeze, no open windows. One group exploring an abandoned house set a camera in the living room and walked into the kitchen. They heard a faint scrape, then another. When they returned, a chair had moved several feet across the floor. No one had touched it. They checked the footage. At first, nothing. Then slowly the chair shifted. Inch by inch, across the room, no visible cause, no person, no explanation. They left immediately, and never went back. Shadows in the dark. Flashlights create shadows. That's normal. But explorers often report shadows that don't behave normally. Shadows that move before they do. shadows that cross hallways with no visible source, figures glimpsed at the edge of vision that disappear when looked at directly. One man exploring an abandoned hotel said he kept seeing someone standing at the end of corridors, always far away, always still. Every time he approached, the hallway was empty. Finally, he aimed his camera and zoomed in from a distance. In the footage, a figure stood clearly in the hallway, tall, dark, unmoving. When he lowered the camera and looked again with his own eyes, nothing was there. Sometimes cameras see what humans can't, or maybe what humans aren't meant to. When buildings feel alive, some abandoned places feel different from the moment you arrive. Not just eerie, not just quiet, alive. Explorers describe buildings that seem to react to them. Floors creak only when they pass, doors close behind them. Echoes follow them from room to room, almost like the structure itself is aware. An abandoned asylum is often mentioned in stories. Visitors say the deeper you go, the heavier the atmosphere becomes. Rooms feel colder, air feels dense, silence feels intentional. One visitor said he spoke aloud jokingly, "If anyone's here, give me a sign." Seconds later, a loud bang echoed down the hallway, not from outside, not from another room, from directly behind him. He ran, didn't stop until he reached his car, and even then, he felt like something had followed him out. Some places don't like visitors, especially at night. Why people keep going back. Despite the fear, despite the experiences, people continue exploring abandoned places. Why? Because there's a strange beauty in them, a quiet history, a frozen moment in time. Walking through abandoned places feels like stepping into forgotten stories, but there's also something else, something darker, the thrill of the unknown, the pull of places that feel off-limits, the curiosity of what might happen when no one else is around. And sometimes people return because they feel drawn back, not by choice, but by something they can't explain, a place that lingers in their mind, in their dreams, in their thoughts late at night, as if the building itself is calling them again. Time feels wrong. There's a strange effect people report after spending time in abandoned places at night. Time doesn't feel normal. You walk in thinking you've been exploring for 10 minutes, then check your phone and an hour has passed. Or worse, you feel like you've been inside forever, only to realize it's been barely 15 minutes. Explorers often describe clocks stopping, phone batteries draining unusually fast, watches freezing at a specific time. One group entered an abandoned office building just after midnight. They filmed casually, exploring floor by floor. Nothing unusual happened, at least, nothing obvious. When they finally left and got back to their car, they checked the time. It was 4:30 a.m. They had only recorded about 40 minutes of footage, and none of them remembered being inside for more than an hour. Security cameras later showed something unsettling. They had entered the building at 12:07 a.m. and walked out at 4:22 and nearly 4 hours inside. But none of them could explain where the missing time went. Sometimes abandoned places don't just feel frozen in time, they seem to pull you out of it. Mirrors and reflections. Mirrors in abandoned places are different, dust-covered, cracked, aged, but at night they become something else entirely. Explorers often avoid mirrors in abandoned buildings, not because they're superstitious, but because reflections sometimes don't behave correctly. One explorer walking through an abandoned hotel bathroom flashed his light across a broken mirror. For a split second, he saw himself standing there. But the reflection wasn't holding a flashlight, it was just standing, still, looking directly at him. He lowered the light, looked again. Now the reflection matched his movements perfectly. He left immediately. Another group reported seeing movement behind them in a mirror, even though the hallway behind them was empty. Mirrors reflect more than just light. They reflect space, presence, motion, and sometimes they reflect things that aren't actually there, or worse, things that are there but shouldn't be visible at all. When you leave but it doesn't, the most unsettling stories don't happen inside abandoned places. They happen after people leave. Explorers sometimes report strange experiences hours or even days later. Footsteps in their homes, objects slightly out of place, electronics glitching without reason. The same heavy feeling they had inside the building following them back. One explorer said after visiting an abandoned prison, he began hearing faint metallic sounds at night, like distant cell doors closing, chains shifting, echoes in empty hallways, except he was at home. alone, miles away. Another person claimed every photo from their visit appeared normal except one. A dark shape stood behind them in every single image, even in photos taken outside the building, even in their car, even at home later that night. They deleted the images, but the unease remained. Some explorers have a quiet rule: when leaving an abandoned place at night, don't look back at the entrance. Don't linger, don't call out, don't acknowledge the building, just leave, because sometimes you're not the only thing walking out. If you ever visit an abandoned place at night, go carefully. Listen closely. Pay attention to the silence, to the shadows, to the feeling in your chest when something doesn't feel right, because abandoned places aren't always empty, and not everything inside them is abandoned. So if you hear footsteps when you're alone, if a door closes without wind, if you feel watched in an empty room, leave. Don't wait to understand. Don't stay to investigate, just leave. Because some places don't like visitors, and some doors should never be opened after dark.